everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Joshua Bridwell Show. I'm your host, Joshua Bridwell, and this is the podcast where we talk about your personal and professional growth. Today, I've got a very special guest with me. I'm going to wait for him to finish his drink there. I'm as bad as a waiter, it seems. This is Michael Lewis with AML Homes, LLC. Michael, how's it going?
Doing well. How are you doing, sir?
Oh, I can't complain. Better than I was yesterday. Well, the reason that I've got you on the show with me here today is you have been working really hard to overcome one of the largest issues that entrepreneurs face that nobody is talking about. And for those who are listening that don't know my story, I'll keep it brief, don't want to bore you. But I started a company back in 2017, and I had always been taught from a business point of view, delegate, delegate, delegate. So I gathered 6 or 7 people to help me out. We weren't making any money. So I had 7 people with me that weren't receiving a paycheck. Moral business practices. But the problem is we still weren't going anywhere. So I had an uncle who said that he was going to take a look at all my business papers and give me some sort of direction. And he told me, after looking through the book for about 30 seconds, that I just needed to call it quits. I needed to shut my business down. And those words coming out of his mouth tore me apart. But on the other side, I was going through LinkedIn this morning, and one of my connections has been running an edible cookie dough company for the last 4 years. And I mean, she had been posting content after content after content. I thought that this business was doing very, very well. And in the video that I saw this morning, she was taking the business logo off the back of her car, and she has changed the description on her profile to failed businesses one. And this was her first business that she had ever started, and it was the only business that she was ever running. And throughout her video and throughout just reading her messages and the way that she was taking it very, very well. Whenever I had to shut my first company down, I did not take it very well. So we've got two ends of the spectrum. We have me, who was very, very emotionally attached to the business. And we had her, who saw it as not necessarily a bad thing, but a stepping stone to move forward. And a big mistake that entrepreneurs make is they become way too emotionally invested in their business. You hear entrepreneurs do this all the time. They might call it their baby, their child. Some might even call it their significant other, however you want to personify the business. People tend to have an emotional relationship with their business, and that creates a problem. The problem that creates is they are no longer to be able to make wise business decisions, much in the same way that it's very easy for people to recognize when somebody else's child is acting up or misbehaving, but not their own. They have a tendency to make excuses. And for me, I was way too emotionally involved in my first company. I saw it way more as a baby, as a child, than as it actually was, which is a project. Sometimes you get a passing grade on a project. Sometimes you might fail the project, but that doesn't mean that you can't try harder with the information that you know on your next project. And so that's the difference between myself with my first company and this cookie dough friend of mine who had to shut down her business. She saw it as a stepping stone. And so I've got Michael with me because I actually have quite a bit of experience working with Michael, working with AML Homes. And whenever I first stepped in to help, he exhibited a lot of oh, this is my baby, this is my child. I want the best care for my child. And he's come a long way from dissociating himself from the emotional side of the business and getting more to the transactional side, the side where you're able to make better sound choices to propel your business in a healthy way. And so, Michael, what are some of the things that you have done to really distance yourself emotionally from the business so that you can make wise business decisions?
I believe part of the part of the process that helped me do that was hardship. The company went through some pretty hard times the last, I guess, a couple of years ago, and it really made me step back and reevaluate because I couldn't. There wasn't really anything I could do to. I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain. It wasn't my baby. I was afraid that it was going to crash and burn, and I was going to have to come to terms with that. So I kind of started. I started the process of coming to terms with that, and the ship kind of righted itself to some degree. But I did realize that seeing my business that way, it wasn't fair to other people around me, and it wasn't fair to me. It put way too much pressure on me, and that was probably the biggest thing was the amount of pressure and stress that it put on me, and the effect it had on my health.
Yeah. And like I said, I have quite a bit of experience working with Michael, and I got to see a lot of this, and in some ways I still see it. You know, this is something that's a process, and you constantly have to remind yourself that this is a project. It's not a baby, and so we have to also look at what it does to the teams that are involved. You've heard it before, and there's a lot of truth in this, that anytime you bring in a new team member, you cannot expect them to care for your business the way that you do. And much in the same way that, I know I keep relating this back to a child, but it's just the nature of the beast here as far as relationship and connection goes. Nobody else is going to care for your child the way that you care for your child. And so you have a really hard time letting go of some of the aspects because you're afraid that somebody is going to mess up your child. When if you see it more as a project, you are able to more easily let go of different aspects. And you being a solopreneur for a very long time, when I stepped in, it was hard for you to let go of those reins. What were some things that you have done mentally, physically, systematically that made it easier for you to delegate and not only delegate, but to trust once delegated?
Uh, that's a big question. Touch on what you said a minute ago to um, an explanation of kind of how this works. You mentioned it as you mentioned it like your baby, and you can be too close to something. You can be too close, and you don't see the things that are happening because you're too close. Once you step back and you quit hovering like a parent and you stop hovering over it and being so protective of it, then you can kind of start to see it for what it is. You can see the mistakes, you can see the errors, you can see where it needs some discipline or where you need some discipline, where people need discipline. You can take a lot better inventory of what's actually going on in the business when you stop hovering like a parent. With that said, some of the things that helped me transition from one mindset to the other. Um, a lot of it really was kind of what I said earlier. The effect that it had on my health um, was a very big deal. I basically had a nervous breakdown, and that caused quite a few issues. And then I got COVID in a few years ago when it was all the rage. um, and that affected my business considerably. So I really had to take a step back and look at things with the employees I had, with the contractors I had, things like that. My business is flipping houses and wholesaling and doing real estate. So I have had a few people that worked for me as contractors, and you're absolutely right. It's really difficult to trust others with your baby. They really, really have to prove themselves to you. And while yes, that's a good thing, you're being overprotective and you're making bad decisions. You need to evaluate it for what it is and move forward. And it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to have errors uh, and learn from those errors and correct them. One of the things that all right, pause, and you can cut this, right?
I can.
Okay. I was hoping you weren't live. Repeat your question again.
Yeah. So the question at hand is, what have you done to make delegation easier? Whether that's mentally, physically, systematically, and with that delegation, what have you done to trust with that delegation?
The things that I did to be able to delegate actions, to be able to delegate things to other people in my business, to me, it was all about systems. If you have systems and trusted systems, if you have trusted systems in your business that are that you have proof of concept, that are that they're legitimate systems, then you can rely on those systems and the details in them to move forward. And if you do that part right, it's almost plug and play with employees or other business members. Um, I say that, and I don't take that term lightly because I don't believe it's plug and play, but I do believe that you can trust others to do what they're supposed to do more because they have a solid foundation to follow. Um, they have specific instructions on paper, quote unquote,
Mhm.
that they are to follow. When you have directives like that you can give to your employees, it does make it easier to delegate to them and to trust that they will do what they're supposed to do. That's kind of one of the things that I found was probably the biggest help in being able to delegate and trusting the people I'm delegating to.
That's really important. You and I were kind of on opposite ends of the spectrum where you had a really hard time delegating. And as you heard from my story, um, I over delegated too quick. There is a happy medium, and this isn't going to be a whole big podcast over delegation today. Maybe in the future. Stay tuned. But delegating is something that's important. And when you do decide to delegate, it's not enough to give the task and then check in every 5 minutes, right? You have to be able to delegate and trust with that. Peace of mind. You have brought team members in for a reason. Trust your team. That they are hopefully of the right mind of wanting to drive this ship in the same direction. Do you have something?
I'll say another thing for that. When you do delegate to someone, it's okay that they make mistakes too.
It's
It
important.
Yeah, it's
Important thing.
really important that they make mistakes, and if you're hovering, you're not going to allow that. It These employees need to make their mistakes so they can learn from them as well. But that's also going to build their trust in you, and it's going to build their confidence in you that they aren't being micromanaged and they have some room to spread their elbows a little bit and relax and take care of their business. And that'll go a long way to letting them acclimate in properly and really kind of spread their wings and fly in your business.
Yeah, bingo. Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. Failing forward is the most important thing, right? It's important to delegate and trust. Once, if they have questions, they'll come to you. You should create a culture where people are comfortable enough to come to you when they have questions.
Absolutely.
And after the job is done, create a culture of feedback. There's healthy feedback, and that right there is the healthy relationship. Um, you know, one thing that is relatively specific to you, Michael, you started your business with an unemployment check. Your back was against the wall. There are entrepreneurs out there in the world, or want to be entrepreneurs out there in the world, who make a decent living. They're afraid to pull the trigger on their dream because they think they need this gigantic cushion, this gigantic nest egg in order to actually make their dream come true. And, depending on the business, okay.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't hurt.
Well, if you're wanting to create a farm equipment rental place, sure, that's something that could help. But in a lot of cases, people can start businesses with little to no money. But here's the danger in that. If your back is against the wall and this is the vehicle that got you out, of course you're going to have an emotional attachment to it. It's what saved your life.
Yeah. And I burned the bridges. I burned the bridges behind me, so to speak. I don't know if you've heard the expression, but as you move forward and progress, you burn the bridges behind you so you can never go back.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I burned every bridge I crossed, and there was no going back. This was my baby, and I was going to see it through. It was either going to succeed or it was going to kill me, and I was okay with either one.
There's a really great book out right now by one of my um, LinkedIn connections. I'm very well connected. But he wrote a book called Burn the Boats.
Yeah.
When people were coming over to the new world, they kept getting, you know what? I'm not going to dive into all of that, but basically, in order to come to the new world and to succeed in the new world, they had to burn the boats. There was no turning back. And when something is as important as saving your life, saving your finances, saving your home, it is very easy to get attached to that. And so in your case, I really do applaud you for being able to take that step back. There were moments when you had questioned, okay, is this something that I should have just closed shop and walked away? But what kept you from doing that was your relationship with your business. Do you believe that if you did not have this initial, this is my baby mentality, you would have stuck with it as long as you did?
That's a very good question. I can honestly say that that I wouldn't have. I really don't think I would have. Some of the some This is the best and worst thing I've ever done in my life. Uh, it's most definitely the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. I have never, because there's so many different aspects involved with running your own business, and mindset is the biggest one of them all. You can run a business without book smarts. You can run a business without education. You can run a business without experience. You can do just about anything without those things. But you have to have the mindset to succeed. And that's not just running your own business, that's in anything.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of the hardest things, along with just owning the business itself. Changing my mindset was one of the hardest things in the world. Changing from, uh, a sense of lacking to a sense of abundance, and believing that I am supposed to be a winner.
Yeah.
Um, and that goes back to what I have shut the business down. Uh, Almost assuredly, yes. Um, because I didn't really have that mindset either of I'm a champion, I'm a winner, and no matter what happens, it's going to right itself. I didn't have that mindset. So things had to get really difficult for me to get the mindset that I even wanted to close. But um, but it would have taken a true act of God to probably make me close it at that point.
Mm-hmm.
I wish that I had looked at it differently. Sometimes I wish that I had used this as a stepping stone. And of course, it's not too late for that. But I have put myself through a meat grinder pretty much. It feels like a lot of times with this business, and it's still not where I want it to be. And that is the hardest thing, or that's a really hard thing to come to terms with, because I'm still not all the way out of that it's my baby thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still struggling with that.
Yeah, like I said, that's something that's going to be a journey for a long time. You had mentioned it being a mindset. It very much is. The, the difference within the mindset that I've experienced has been, if your business shuts down and you consider it very relational, you go through the stages of grief.
Yeah, you can go through depression. I was there.
When you see it more as a project, you see the failure as a success. And you had talked about wishing that you had started thinking about your business as a project rather than a relationship sooner. If you had, what do you think would be different today?
I would probably have a couple of different businesses. I think this one would probably still be open and running, and it would probably be more successful than it is now, because of the mindset shift it in. Um, but I think I would have a couple of different companies. I would have diversified a little bit and do some other avenues of real estate and potentially even further. Um, but yeah, it's one of the hardest things in the world, changing your mindset. And like we like we both said earlier, it's not something that's going to just go away. I still to this day uh, have problems with not wanting to do certain things because I've put so much into this. I'm trying for it not to be it's my baby, but I also still come back to I have sacrificed so much. I have spent so much money. I have done so much for this business that I would be throwing in the trash if I close or if I put this on the back burner or whatever the case is. And that, in essence, is the same mindset. It's not seeing this as a stepping stone to move forward.
Yeah. I think that those are really important things to process. If what we're wrapping up here, but I've got just a couple more questions that they're a little bit less heavy than we've dove into so far. I almost said dived, bad English. My apologies, everybody. If you had to go back to 2017 when AML Homes LLC started over, and there was a singular piece of advice that you could give yourself in that moment, starting your first big company, what would it be?
I could probably sum it up in one word, and that's consistency. I would tell myself and beat it into myself if necessary. Consistency. It's all about consistency. You can't,
Sound like
you
my wife.
can't, huh?
Sound like my wife.
Man, it's, I can't put into words the importance of consistency because you can't track anything if there's no consistency. And if you can't track anything, you don't have a business, you have a hobby. Um, you have to have consistency because most companies have some type of marketing in some way, fashion, or another. And in that, you absolutely have to have consistency because you have to connect with people and they have to see your brand or your your process or your whatever the case is, product is what I was looking for. They have to see your product or your brand, and they have to see it consistently for it to work. Um, so if I could tell myself anything at all, it would be to pick a route, pick a channel, pick a marketing channel, I guess, specifically, and stick with it. Give it 6 months to a year if possible to start to produce because anything under that, you can get away with 3 to 4 months, but it's not ideal. Anything under 4 months, you're literally throwing money in the trash. So to me, consistency should be plated in gold and up on a pedestal, you know, on the wall or something. It needs to be your overriding thought is consistency.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's really important. Like you said, if you can't track stuff, then you really don't have a business. And it's really hard to be able to tell when you're making wise business decisions, when you're not. Should we focus more on this marketing? Should we focus more on this marketing? Are we actually growing? There's a whole bunch of different things that you can track if you are just consistent. And consistency takes discipline. And
Yes.
and in order to be consistent, especially if you're a solopreneur, if you are wanting to be consistent, you have to be able to control that person in the mirror. And sometimes that is the hardest challenge. Again, that's not so much what this particular episode is about, but we can dive into that. We could bring Michael back for that one.
Well,
Uh,
he and I get in fights on a regular basis. That guy in the mirror. We disagree a lot, and it's extremely difficult. Um, that self-discipline thing, man, it is a killer.
and there's a really great book by Jocko Willink. If you're not familiar with him, he's an incredible leader. He's a Navy SEAL. He's one of the authors of Extreme Ownership. He wrote a field manual on self-discipline, and it's got pretty much anything in that book that you are struggling with, whether you're eating too much candy, you're not going to the gym, you're watching too much TV, you don't really know how to control that person in the mirror. There's something in there for you. And that's not a sponsorship. That's just something that I read and refer to a lot, and it's made a difference. Um, but speaking of books, my final question for you is, what three books have really transformed you? That can be your business, that can be yourself. What three books would you say were the most transformational in your life somehow?
I thought you said you were done with the hard questions.
Right.
Um, I read a lot of books. I actually don't read. I do
Listen,
audiobooks. So, but I go through quite a few. I think Go Giver was one. Such a phenomenal book. It's about concentrating on helping others more than helping yourself, and how it will come back around. Um, how to break what was it? How to break the habit of being yourself, uh, by Dr. Joe Dispenza. Um, Phenomenal book. It goes through the minds. It goes through the science behind your mindset, and the science behind changing your thought processes, and then it goes into the way to do it. Um, just a phenomenal book. Third, uh, there's so many of them. Think and Grow Rich, Profit First. There's Story Brand. There's so many books that are just great. You're gonna you're gonna laugh at me probably, but 50 Cent put out a book, and
this smart man.
he is actually very intelligent. Um, and the book was really, really good. I think it's Get Rich or Die Trying. I think um, it's a little vulgar in spots, but it's
It's fair.
it's easy enough to get through. Um, Phenomenal book. Uh, Gosh, there's just so many. It's really a tough decision. I would be glad to share my list with you. Um, Maybe we can do that on another call or something.
Yeah, I was laughing a little bit that you had mentioned Story Brand, because for the listeners out there, I got that book for Michael, and he had no real interest in reading it. I was like, you got to read it, and apparently it made his list. So,
Yeah,
but I feel like
yeah.
that's how it's gonna be with that. What is that book? $1 million and
Mm, 12 months to a million.
that's it. That's
You
on my.
know, it's funny. That book is about creating a store, creating a product, and creating an e-store or e-commerce, but it can be used. There are so many points in that book that can be used for any type of business. You know, like obviously mine's not e-commerce, being real estate, but there are so many nuggets in there that I've taken out for my business. It's another really great book. I think I'm on my third or fourth time listening to it.
That's awesome. Also, none of these books, none of these authors are paid advertisements. This is just raw, genuine discussion. So I love it, Michael. And thank you so much for your vulnerability today, and thank you so much for the grit that you have used to get where you are. And I'm super excited that you're able to make wiser business decisions because of the mindset shifts that you've made, because of the ability to delegate in a healthy way to your team. Man, I'm really proud of you for everything that you've gone through. I'm proud of where you are today. Keep your head up, keep on moving. And this has been the Joshua Bridwell Show. We'll catch you next time.
Thank you. Have a good one.